Welcome to Jewish Boy Calls His Mother. I'm your host, Sadia, and this is my mother, Ima. Hey, Ima.
Hey, hi, Baruch Hashem. And this is Raven, of course, who always likes to
Walk right in front of you.
butt in, literally,
Yeah.
sometimes. So anyway, I had a very um, positively interesting experience yesterday that I have
Okay.
never had before. No, it wasn't. I went out on a date with a man. That was not it.
Okay.
Um, I was giving a piano lesson to some of my students in West Palm. And so one of my students asked me, can we pause the piano lesson so we can watch the rocket launch? So I figured in my day, watching the rocket launch, unless you lived around Cape Canaveral or we're able to go down there and be part of the spectator crowd, meant you watch it on television. So I said, "Oh, it's interesting. What rocket launch?" And he says, "It's Elon Musk's SpaceX." So I said, "Okay." So it came time for the rocket launch, and so we get up from the piano, and I go into the living room, figuring, I'm going to watch it on television, and I see the mother pick up the baby and get the kids. She goes, "Come on, everybody, we're watching the rocket launch," and I see her go outside. Everyone's going outside. So I said, wait a minute. I said, aren't you watching the rocket launch on television? She says, we don't have a television. We only have a monitor. And everyone goes outside. So I couldn't imagine what was going on here. So they're all looking up at the sky. And all of a sudden, we see this huge ball of smoke and fire, streaming, just blasting off into the sky and streaming across the sky, and the mother and the kids yell, "Look, there it is!" And wow! I mean, I had never in my life seen anything up close, alive like this in my life. And so I said, "I don't believe it." I said, "When you said rocket launch, I didn't know we were actually going to see a rocket blast into outer space like that." And she said that at the SpaceX, Elon Musk's space station, what is it? I guess space station. I guess what would you call
It's a
it?
space company.
Yeah,
It's a company for space exploration.
yes, and it's right near West Palm.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What's
So
I
yeah,
was gonna say what's so interesting about his program. I believe that all of those rockets are recyclable, and that's what's such an achievement, because NASA and like all these other you know countries, governments that are trying to do these space races, they unfortunately don't have a way to recycle the rockets. But SpaceX is developing a recyclable rocket that it goes up and it goes down, it goes up and it goes down. And
that's what the kids were telling me about this.
yeah, and like it's trying to what they're trying to do is they're trying to make space exploration available for the everyday man, where if you need to get to New York, if you need to get to like London to New York or vice versa, what you do is you go into a rocket, it goes up into space and then lands back into London. So instead of taking like a 12-hour flight or a 16-hour flight, it'll be a rocket ship that'll be a total of maybe 2-3 hours.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
So that's what they're developing and working on.
In other words, because it would to send it up to like an ellipse, like up and down, is much less time than flying across the circumference of the Earth.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah, I
kind of
heard.
what that's what they're up to. And I think also a few other companies from other like billionaires that have been working on this. I think I know the guy from Amazon, Jeff Bezos. I think he's working on something like that as well. And I think the guy who does Virgin Mobile just finished a commercial space flight. So they were able to do a commercial space flight, but I think like a ticket's like $250,000, and like it hasn't really been able to, you know, go.
I don't think they took off yet, did they? I don't think that they've done it.
I
They just
think
done
they
tickets. They
I
do?
think they
I think
have.
so.
Um,
Hmm.
because it's Virgin Mobile. I think it's like space flight. Yeah, it's called Virgin Galactic.
Hmm.
Um, it from what I can tell, like I'm looking up the website, you can literally buy a ticket if I'm not mistaken. There's
But
Galactic.
have they done it yet? I mean, they're selling tickets, but have they actually blasted off yet?
I'm not sure. Uh, I think it's just right now they're working on it. Like they have news that they're here's one just clicked on. It says Virgin Galactic launches into the new year with January commercial flight. So there's supposed to be a galactic called Galactic '06 mission launch window opens January 26th, 2024. So that's when they're starting it.
Where are they? Where's their launching center? I'm gonna call it that.
It seems like I'm just skimming through it right now. Um, I don't want to take up too much airtime just
Uh-huh.
having dead air, but it seems like
Uh-huh.
they're getting things ready. Like they're really pushing, and I think that's what like Elon Musk is pushing on. And there was this whole space race. I mean, it hit the news, I would say about a year ago when there was this whole massive space race and whatnot. But which I think is great. I think it's fantastic. I mean, that's kind of how a lot of inventions came to be, and a lot of progress came to be when a lot of rich billionaires just wanted to go ahead and play a game of competition, you know? And then eventually it gets to a point where it's just more commercialized. I mean, the car was something that was supposed to be only for rich people, and then eventually got to a point where you had different developers trying to be better at commercial what's commercial factory production. And then that's when I think Ford started the whole commercial factory setup that really people started copying. That's why Ford became so famous, because he was the first one to have an assembly line.
Yeah,
And
standardized
then
parts. Yeah.
he's the one that started the idea of having a weekend, because all poor people couldn't drive because they would just be at work all day and they wouldn't have time off. So he gave them time off so people would want to drive, so more car sales would go up. So anybody who worked for him got weekends. So it was a whole process, and then everything else bled into it. So I think with the way I see it, with SpaceX and everything, it's really coming into its own where space exploration is becoming more of a reality. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in 20
Spend
years.
your honeymoon on the moon.
Yeah, I mean, I think was it India? India sent a spaceship to the moon just recently, but it didn't land correctly, or was it Israel as well? I'm trying to remember. I read up on space news.
So well, anyway, so I was reminiscing with my students and their mother about in the 1950s when I was in elementary school,
Mhm.
when space exploration actually started.
Yeah.
And I remembered Sputnik. I was in second grade when Sputnik went up, and they had the United States government had a fit when Sputnik went up. I mean, it was like it was a total curve ball, totally out of surprise, and it shook them to the reality that the science programs in the elementary schools were deficient in our country, and they started a whole like science revolution, a science education revolution of really starting to educate elementary children in the science areas. Then I remember when I was, I think it was Alan Shepard, I'm trying to think when he went up. I think I might have been in seventh grade or something like that. Well, whenever there was a space lift, a rocket was sent into space, classes would stop. We would all go into different designated classrooms where there was a television, and we would watch the rocket launch on television. And what I found so fascinating was how the cameras shifted as the rocket was getting hot, it's getting higher and higher and higher. And you could see like the lens shifting on the cameras. and the sky was getting darker and darker until finally you couldn't see the rocket anymore and it was gone. But when I was telling the kids about Alan Shepard, I said, first of all, I was also, first of all, I was talking about Yuri Gagarin. They were surprised when I told them that the first cosmonaut, astronaut in outer space was not American. It was Russian, and his name was Yuri Gagarin. And they were surprised about that. Then Alan Shepard came, and I said that with Alan Shepard, they just sent him up and brought him right back down. I don't know how long he was in outer space for, but it wasn't that long, which surprised a lot of us because we thought, oh boy, first Americans going in outer space, we pictured him like going, to the moon, up around the world. No, not yet. They sent him up and down. So the kids were asking me, why did they just do that? So I said, because space exploration was something brand new and they didn't want to endanger him. They just wanted to send him up to see if they could send the man up and bring him down successfully. And that's what they did. Then I told them about John Glenn. They were like fascinated with this. It was like I was telling them about a different world. I told them about John Glenn. And I said, when John Glenn was the first astronaut to go totally around the globe, and when he blasted off, the man who was from Houston Control, as he blasted off, said to him, "God's speed, John Glenn." So the kids were, being Orthodox Jewish kids, they were, of course, it was really like interesting that, here they mentioned God when John Glenn, blasted off. And then I told them, I forgot, it was the 3 astronauts. Was it the ones who went to the moon? I forgot which astronauts it was, but there were astronauts. I think it might have been the moon mission, the moon mission in 1969, where when they looked at the Earth from outer space, they read from Bereshit, of course, in English.
Yeah.
But they read the first, about Hashem creating the heavens and the earth and everything being void, and Hashem separating the waters and the land. And the kids were also fascinated that, here, these regular non-Jewish American astronauts, very secular, non-Jewish, were moved to actually read from Bereshit, from Genesis and the Bible about God creating the heaven and the earth. And I was thinking about it and I thought, that's why the United States won the space race. Because we mentioned God. And the Soviets, obviously an atheistic country, did not.
Yeah. I was also going to say a few things. Well, with Alan Shepard, the lunar module experienced a fault that almost caused an automatic abort code to be issued. So luckily, it would have resulted in the ascent phase to separate and descend back into orbit. So that was something that happened with him. And John Glenn, surprisingly, I think, I'm trying to remember, I think he was 77. I think
yes.
when he went in, I think in the 90s.
Yes.
So that's wild. I think that's the oldest astronaut.
Yes. I remember when I thought it was so amazing. That was so amazing that he did that.
I was
I remember Gus Grissom. Gus Grissom, the space module started taking in water when he had splashed down, but thankfully he was able to use his emergency equipment and float in the water for a while. So the Coast Guard, not the Coast, the aircraft carrier picked him up. And I remember listening to the news. They said when they picked him up, when he came on board, the first thing he said was, "My head is full of seawater."
But didn't he die?
He died in that horrible fire. Yeah, the 3 astronauts, they died in that horrible fire that happened. It was during they were they were doing a test, and the sad thing was that there was an engineer that before this test expressed concern about the high level of oxygen mixture that they were using in the space capsule, and his warnings got ignored.
Oh wow.
That's what caused the flash. That's what caused the flash fire.
Yeah, I mean, I just, as a kid, like, of course, one of the main things you want to be is either like, a fireman or a policeman or an astronaut. And I was just obsessed with being an astronaut as a kid. I remember watching, you know, in the science center, they had the space exploration observatory and whatnot. That was always fun and exciting to look at. And that's why I still um I like use different apps to like check out the stars, which is funny because the only two things you can see in Baltimore, um, average night, is planets, Mars and Venus. That's it. You can't like
Yeah. That's most
that's
places on Earth. Yeah.
yeah,
hmm
yeah. I'd like to see more and whatnot, but like I've tried and it's mainly Mars and Venus.
Do
That's
you have that app on your phone where you can go out and like what's it, take a picture and they'll tell you what you're seeing?
well, I have it. You don't take a picture. You just
What is it?
point to the star, and it
Right.
shows you what it is.
That is fantastic. Is that for free? Maybe I should get it.
Yeah, it's for free. It's for free.
Ooh, oh, I want to get it.
Um,
What's it called?
I think let me just pull it up here. Hold on. I
I
think
don't
it's
get apps
called
unless they're free.
yeah, I think it's called Sky something or another. Um, I have it, but unfortunately my phone kind of like uninstalls the apps if I run out of space, which I have to work on.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's funny because like you really have to keep this space exploration on the wraps. Like it was like trying to, I mean, you feel like you know more about it than I do, but like growing up in the 60s, there was this high volume intensity again Americans against the Russians of trying to, you know, be more technologically advanced, which in some way I think was a good thing.
It was, but the reason for that was there was this fear that if the Russians got to the moon before we did, that they could very well launch an atomic missile from the moon. They would have a military advantage.
Wow.
That was one of the fears about the Russians getting to the moon before us.
The thing
So
is, yeah. Well, I was gonna say that like there are concerns now with America and the Chinese. Um,
I
that
saw.
yeah, that's actually Japanese what you just said.
Oh, okay.
Um, but
Don't tell me I worked in an Asian arts center when I was in college.
yeah, but I've watched a bunch of anime and that's what they say. They say aso and they're like and that's Japanese.
Okay.
But yeah, it's right now. I mean, do you remember that balloon that came out that was like Chinese balloon like what like 6 months ago?
Who could possibly forget that?
Jeez Louise. But like that's what's been happening right now is that there it seems to be um it seems to be a a technological and space race between the Chinese government and the American government um with satellites and control over the moon too, which is very interesting.
Uh-huh. So I've heard I was thinking to myself, we've heard a lot about, you know, the United States has been warned a number of times by a number of people in the know that China is on a very organized, um, well thought out path to take over the United States. So the other day I thought to myself, okay, what are you going to do with us once you take us over? I mean, you're spending so much time and money taking over a country. What are you going to do when you finally take them over? I mean,
Well, it's
when
just
you look at the course of world history of one country taking over another, it's like that. It's like all the money. I mean, if that country has resources that you want, all the money and time and effort and casualties that you spent waging a war, you could have just as well taken the same amount of money and effort and offered to buy some of the resources that you needed.
well, that's
Why
what
do you
they're
have to have a war and take over a country?
Ema, that's what China's doing right now.
What's the advantage? What are you going to do with it once you get it?
Do you not do you like
It's the senselessness of war. It's the war is really totally senseless. You start to think about it. take over. Okay, you're gonna beat up on this other country, and take over their people, blah blah blah. Now what are you gonna do with them? Huh?
Okay. Just letting you know, as of 2021, Chinese entities and individuals own about 384,000 acres of U.S. agricultural land.
Well, that's why in Florida, and I think it was the governor in Alabama, kicked them out and
Well,
they made a law that China is no longer, no foreign country is allowed to buy any more land in those two states.
what's funny is actually Canada is the foreign country that owns the most land in America with 12.8 million acres.
Where do they own it?
I can look into it.
So maybe our enemy is really Canada and not China.
Well, the list goes Canada, Netherlands, Italy, UK, Germany, and I think like all the way down, like then it goes like foreign, then a little bit of then under that is like all like China is like 0.03%. That's what's so funny, but it's just whatever. It's just I don't know. I have this idea in my head that most things in this world are done out of ignorance than malice. I'm not saying everything, but most things are done out of ignorance. And I think a lot of times it's just like a lot of happenstances, you know, and people want to believe that there's like some big conglomerate, you know, Illuminati controlling all the pieces of the world. And what's more likely
Maybe there is.
Oh my God. What's more likely is that it's just everyone just being idiots and doing the most obvious thing. Like I'll give you an example. So there's this conspiracy theory that aliens built the pyramids, right? And how is it possible that like, you know, the Incas built their own pyramids and the Zoroastrians in Iraq, they built their own, you know, pyramids. And there's like this one comment underneath all of this like conspiracy theory. And it's like, maybe because that's the most straightforward way of building up, you know, like before you can really build, like before building an actual skyscraper, like they still had buttresses and they still had to start wide and get more and more narrow. It's like there's just a common understanding of what you need. It's like, well, everyone needs water. Well, something must be behind the water because everyone needs it. So there must be something. No, it's a natural understanding of survival that you need to have water to drink and to feed your animals, to drink, give to your animals and feed your crops and all that stuff. So there's a lot of commonalities that people are trying to make a bigger thing out of, when in reality it's a lot simpler than that. And I think that's what people kind of need to like just get their head around.
By the way, you mentioned something about I remember when you were a little boy, how you wanted to be an astronaut. And so you asked me, I thought you said, can I be an astronaut? I said, sure, you can be an astronaut. So Bubby Rena, I told her about, that you want to be an astronaut. And I said, yeah, sure. You can be. She says to me, it's so nice that you lied to him. I said, I didn't lie. I said, I don't lie to my children. I said, and my mother grew up when the idea with space exploration was like, oh, science fiction. And so I said, Ma, don't you understand? I said, they're going to need astronauts by the time he's an adult to go up to the satellites and to repair the communication satellites. I said, I wasn't lying to him that he could very well be an astronaut.
Yeah. I mean, I do appreciate you doing that in a way of like believing in your kids' dreams, because that helps as a child, where you start to like have this confidence in you because you feel like your parents are behind you, cheering you on. Because at least for me, that took me very far. From a young kid, a teenager, to like a young adult, of confidently handling the challenges of a career and of a job. And the reality is going to hit you in the face later on anyways. But having parents that believe in you, I think is very important. I think that's what's kind of like sad and frustrating with like a lot of other people that have parents that don't really feed into their confidence and feed into their ingenuity and creativity,
Mhm.
and kind of shut them down, which is kind of
Mm.
sad.
That's cruel.
They
That's
think that they're trying to be
cruel.
helpful because they're doing
Mm.
this idea of tough love. There's a lot of people that
Mm.
have that idea out there where it's just like, well, I want to treat my kids the way the world will treat them, you know?
Mm.
And it's
Ab-
like I kind of agree with it and kind of disagree with that, because if you're raising a kid to handle the roughness of the world, you got to give them the confidence that they can handle it.
Mhm.
You know, it's like if you ever see these kids that grew up to be adults that had a really harsh life, they might be able to adapt here and there, but on the whole, they're really broken, and it's a real problem.
Yeah. Mhm. I I know, that um I was hoping that um parents, well, parents in my day, especially Jewish parents, especially East European Jewish parents, sad to say, um, were, I don't know what it was, that they weren't very positive. And I remember your father telling me that when he was a little boy, he told his father he wanted to be president of the United States. And his father said to him, "No Jew has ever been president of the United States." But that's not the point.
Yeah.
The point is, like you said, to build up your child's confidence that they can, that, their dreams, like, that they can do. And I
It's
think that had a very bad effect on your father. But I
well,
remember my I don't know, my father was more positive with me as far as education, career, as far as like aspirations were concerned. Um, I don't know, my mother had she had, like I said, the East European Jewish depression, depressive streak in her. Um, and I think it's because their parents as immigrants, life in Russia and Poland and the Ukraine for a Jew, well, for anybody actually in those days under the Tsar, was very, very harsh. And then they went from the Tsar to a very oppressive communistic regime. So when you're raised in that type of environment, you know, you're raised in the type of environment where life is so precarious, you don't want to be too hopeful. You don't want to be disappointed.
I literally was just having this conversation with our neighbor, um, because he saw that like somebody uh bought from our registry um something that we had for, God willing, our future play on our baby. And he asked us, like, oh, are you guys doing a baby shower or a gender reveal? And I told him, my side of the family, we don't do anything. Like, you don't
Mhm,
even tell anyone that you're pregnant. You just show up and they see you pregnant, and then that's how they find out. You
mhm,
know, I explained that to Ruthie, and that's when Ruthie like wanted to like, tell her side everything. I told her what my custom was and what she felt
yeah.
what she wanted to do, so she felt more comfortable similarly following into what I had. So we waited like 3 months, you know, and then eventually um we told her family, and then her family, found out, different things and whatnot. We told them everything, and it was more of like, you know, I guess more comfortable with them. But I know our side of the family, like we don't do that. And I was explaining that to my neighbor, and I basically said like there's an issue of ayin hara, which I explained to them what it was. But I said also there was this idea that a lot of like Eastern European Jews had this feeling of pogroms and things like that, where you can't emotionally attach to your loved ones, and that you had to just, you didn't want to you wanted to count your blessings to yourself, because if you said it out loud, it might not come true.
Mhm,
You
yeah.
had to be so careful.
Mhm. I can understand too. The you know like the idea of like having a baby shower and everything like that. It would be better to wait till the baby's born, and then at 3 months, then have have some type of a baby shower celebration or something like that. Or, um, but it's I mean I've heard stories about people who decorated a whole room and had a baby shower and everything, and unfortunately things did not work out. And seeing all the baby equipment and all the baby pride, presents just made it that much worse. So there's a good, there's good psychology behind
Yeah. I
not
mean,
doing stuff like this.
I am a little nervous, to be honest. I
Yeah.
want to make sure everything is fine. I want to make sure the baby's healthy,
Everybody
and
is,
so like it's
sure.
just everybody just like I don't
Right.
I just want it to be healthy. I want everything to work itself out.
Sure.
And that's kind of why like now we're doing all these preparations, and like we got like God willing, I think 4 weeks left or 25 days left.
Sure.
You know,
Everybody feels that way. Everybody
yeah,
feels that way when they're expecting. Yeah.
it's look, it's gonna be a fun new adventure. But I was telling Ruthie, I'm like, this is the last time that we're like, God willing, that like we're gonna be just us, and it's just gonna be like how is that for you? It's just like I know like you had Etsy like within a year of you really getting married.
Yeah.
But was this a feeling of like this is the last part of me being an adult without being a parent? Like better I get all my hurrahs out, like anything like that? Or you were like, let's just go, let's pump a bunch of kids out and then like
Yeah.
retire in Florida?
Um, I I, I was looking very, to me, having having a large family. Like I was very, very lucky. I was able to have a large family. To me, it wasn't like, oh, this is, because we got married and had kids fairly, not very late in life, but fairly late in life. So I had a chance to travel and to develop my career and to
Mm-hmm.
do the things I wanted to do as a single person. And I was looking very, very forward to this whole adventure of something, this whole new adventure in my life. And it was almost like it was like, this might sound funny, it was like having kids was like my career actually.
Yeah.
I remember when people were talking about retirement. One time we were at some sort of social gathering, and all these people were talking about retirement. And I was talking about that once my youngest is in school full time, I'm looking forward to going back to work and everything. So one of your, I think if it was a brother or sister, one of your siblings says to me, Ema, everybody is looking forward to retirement. You're looking forward to going back to work.
Mm-hmm.
And what was it? Somebody once said to me that my retirement is going to be, you're going to retire from having kids. That's going to be your retirement.
Yeah. It's for I'm not even thinking about any of that. I'm just one step at a time, one day at a time.
Yeah.
I've been reading all these books and watching all these like videos of how to like care for a child and what to do with child rearing. I'm going to like these parenting classes and whatnot and trying to get a better grip on everything. And it's just like at some point it's just going to be like whatever happens happens. Like I don't know what
Yeah.
else to tell
Well,
you.
me and one of my coworkers one time, this actually pretty recently, we were all talking about child rearing, and we were all saying no amount of movie watching, book reading, education, none of it is going to prepare you for child rearing. It doesn't. It just, you kind of like yeah, you kind they kind of like adapt and go on um
Ugh.
as it happens.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm realizing.
I had an
Um,
English teacher who was talking about that thing in the idea like education, and she said, but the first time she walked into the classroom as a student teacher, she comes in and the kids in the class start giggling. And the first thought that hit her was, nothing I read in my educational psych books said anything about this. And they're laughing and laughing. And she's wondering why they're laughing. She happens to glance down at her skirt. Her entire slip had fallen out and was around her feet.
Oh gosh. That's the thing with kids, is that like they're gonna find your vulnerabilities and they're gonna find your weaknesses and they're gonna poke on them, and you're gonna see yourself in them and all of your faults, and you're gonna just realize like how much work you really need to do on yourself. Like, was there anything in particular that like I did growing up that you remember that like kind of got under your skin?
When you had your kindergarten, was it your kindergarten or
I
when I
remember what you're
graduated?
gonna say. I know exactly what you're talking about. I know exactly
Well,
what you're talking about. It's in my brain. It's in my brain. Yes. It was pre 1A. I was in the old TI um uh um building all the way
yes,
down wherever it was near that we shared with a public school.
it's
I
north
was
of
in the chair.
Northern Parkway.
I was in the chair giving like it was supposed to be like my name is Olive for whatever for Torah, whatever it was. And I fell out of my chair. I'm not sure if I did it by accident or on purpose, but I fell out of the chair.
You were
And
very
then
antsy. You weren't sitting properly. You weren't walking properly. You were just all over the place.
And you were so disappointed in me. You were so upset. You were so upset. I remember that. I had that in my brain. This was like 30 something years ago. Like it's still in my head. Yeah.
And but the second year, the following year,
Yeah.
when you had the presentation, the pre 1A, no, it was the first grade presentation. It was the sitter presentation.
It could have been the first grade.
You did fantastically. You walked in with everybody. You sat nicely. You said your lines nicely. And you know something? Until you actually goofed up, whenever they would have these presentations, I could never understand why people said, "Oh, you walked in so nicely. Oh, you did this so nicely." I thought to myself, well, of course. Why are they making such a big deal out of it? That's what a kid is supposed to do until you goofed up. And then it gave me a very deep appreciation of kids actually walking in nicely and sitting and saying lines and walking out together and giving a nice presentation. It gave me a very different perspective on it, that maybe it wasn't as easy and so matter of factly as I thought of it.
Yes, that I think that's kind of something you need to, that like, I guess as parents, because as a kid, it didn't really, I was just mad. I was just upset that you were upset with me. I didn't know what I did wrong. I still did not understand. I remember that feeling too. I remember that feeling. I remember feeling very confused and very upset and very misheard, and felt that you didn't understand what was going on. You just got mad at me, but you weren't trying to guide me. You just were saying how disappointed you are in me and how I embarrassed you. And it's so funny because it's just like, it's such a vivid memory I have.
And I think back to that incident. I thought to myself, maybe a better course of action on my part should have been to very quietly go around the side of the stage, quietly come out, take you by the hand, and take you out to the wings and talk to you and say, listen, I want you to sit nicely, say your lines nicely. You can do better. And then let you go back. I should have done that instead of just sitting there. I felt that if I would take you out in front of everybody, that would have been embarrassing to you. But thinking back, I thought maybe I should have done that, like not let you continue. But your father noticed something. Your father said that when he came into the auditorium, he smelled a very strong smell of, like, the type of smell with fresh paint, that turpentine smell.